is made possible by the View Conference, the biggest computer graphics conference in Italy. Our dates for 2024 are from the 14th to the 19th of October. We hope to see you in Italy or online. For more information about View Conference, please visit our website, viewconference.it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Elena Gutierrez. I am the director of the View Conference. I want to say thank you to our partner, the VFX Festival happening in London, and I want to invite you to their event in June 3rd and June 4th. And I also want to invite you to View Conference in October, happening in Turin, Italy. Our dates for the View Conference are from the 14th to the 19th of October. So now today the party is here online, but in October it will be in Turin, Italy. So you're all invited to come back. We are in for a treat today. We have the filmmakers, the key artists, key figures from the Oscar nominees for Best Animated Feature. So thank you guys for giving us some of your precious time. And yeah, take it away, Ramin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Maria Elena. My name is Ramin Zahed. I'm the editor-in-chief of Animation Magazine in Los Angeles. And I'm thrilled and proud to be moderating this Oscar nominee panel for you guys. We have 5 amazing talents here with us today. We got Mr. Joaquim dos Santos, one of the directors of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Mr. Peter Sohn, director of Pixar's Elemental. Got the amazing Pablo Berger, director of Robot Dreams. The amazing David Jesteadt, the president of GKIDS, the wonderful studio that released The Boy and the Heron in the US, North America. And last but not least, we have the amazing Troy Quane, one of the directors of Nimona. And we're very happy to have you. I guess the first question I want to kind of, as by way of introduction, maybe you can tell us when you started working on your movie, and did you have a feeling that this movie was going to be so huge? Joaquim, we go with you first.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I started working on Across the Spider-Verse in 2018. And I came on at the tail end of the first film, although we're still wrapping up. And I think in the industry, we sort of knew something cool was going to happen because a trailer dropped and people had gotten real talkative about it. And then I got to see a cut of the film and I was like, this is really cool and different. It hadn't come out. And then it came out and then it started sort of gaining recognition. And so at that point, I knew like the shoes were getting much, much bigger to fill for the sequel.
I can hear you being quiet, Mom.
I, hope I didn't ice your game, man.
No one my age says those words in that order.
It's just hard to see my little man not being my little boy all the time.
Yeah.
You know, for years I've been taking care of this little boy. Making sure he is loved, that he feels like he belongs wherever he wants to be. He wants to go out into the world and do great big things.
Not bad, kid.
And what I worry about most,
I love you, Miles,
is they won't look out for you like us.
Miles!
Want to get out of here? Wherever you go from here, you have to promise to take care of that little boy for me. Make sure he never forgets where he came from. And he never doubts that he is loved. And he never lets anyone tell him that he doesn't belong there. You gotta promise, Miles.
I promise.
Who do you think you are? Really?
We are supposed to be the good guys.
We are.
Peter, what about you?
Yeah, this started off as a seed 7 years ago. It was, I had just come off of a PR tour and I had this incident that happened with my family where I got to thank my parents they were immigrants coming from another country. And I just, growing up with that sort of upbringing, I really appreciated all the sacrifices that they had made. And I pitched that to some friends and then my boss at the studio. And he was like, that's the movie, start on that. And that little seed kicked all this off. And it's been a long time, but it's been really gratifying getting it up to here. A lot of personal seeds, but also a lot of technical challenges too that really sort of took its time. But yeah, I can't believe we're here now.
Meet the residents of Element City. Air usually has their head in the clouds.
Oh, my new jacket!
Earth can be a little seedy.
Nothing weird going on here.
Just a little pruning. Water is always getting into something. Help! And fire, as ordered, we run a little hot.
This shop is dream of our family. Someday it'll all be yours.
But we all live by one simple rule.
Elements cannot mix.
The pipe squished me all out of shape.
Dang.
That's better.
Oh.
So you've never left Firetown?
Sorry, buddy. Elements don't mix.
Hey!
Plus, my dad would boil you alive.
Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life? Come on! Why do they even have these?
Who knows?
Watch this!
Whoa.
Ember, I see a change in you.
What, hair guy? You live here?
It's my mom's place.
We got 2 kids that are swimming around here somewhere. Orca! Follow!
I've been trying to fill my father's shoes, but I never once asked what I wanted to do.
Try this!
Dad, those are too hot.
I love hot food.
You see? He likes it.
And Pablo, tell us about the day that you got that book in your hand and kind of inspired the whole journey.
Yeah, Ramin, you know that I'm a live action director until now. This is my 4th film, but my first animated film. I made the decision to make an animated film in 2018. So I wrote a script based in the graphic novel. And then everything went very quickly, the financing, the storyboard, and the whole production. But when I saw we really had something very special is after 1 year working on the animatic, because we felt, wow, this is working. The animatica was moving the people, and I felt like we were confident. And directors, by nature, we have to think big and be extremely positive. So, of course, I was thinking I was going to get nominated, thinking and telling everybody on the crew, we're going to get there. Of course, when we got the news, I was surprised, like I think everybody else on the panel.
And Dave, of course, you've been handling Miyazaki's movies for so many years. And of course, we all got excited when we heard that Miyazaki was going to come out of retirement. Tell us about how you felt about it. When did you realize that GKIDS was going to be able to handle this?
Yeah, so I think we released the previous Studio Ghibli film when Marnie was there about 9 years ago, and we sort of expected that that would be one of the sort of maybe last works or something of the studio. It wasn't clear exactly what they were working on. They ended up creating another film called Earwig and the Witch that was CG. But around 5 or 6 years ago, we got a call saying, actually, Hayao Miyazaki's cooking up something. We can't share too many details yet, but don't expect it anytime soon was, I think, the real message. And so it was basically like, don't plan your life around it, but we'll keep you kind of updated as it goes. And I think there was no deadline given, no timeline at all. It was just basically a totally open process. He ended up actually ended up going a lot faster during COVID because it ended up really focusing both him and the team. They didn't really have a whole lot else going on. And so that was sort of, I think, just being supported from afar. And then about a year or 18 months ago, I think, is when our work sort of began. We started working with Studio Ghibli about 12 years ago, and we handle a lot of aspects of their all aspects of the North American business, but also a lot of international. So we came in to help with English dub and do other things. So yeah, it's really started heating up about 18 months ago.
Very cool. And Troy, tell us about your long journey.
Did we think we'd be sitting contending for an Oscar? No, we didn't even think this movie was going to get made. So honestly, Nimona was optioned by Fox in 2016. Went through a historic buyout of one giant studio, ingesting another. Nick and I stepped into the director's chairs on Nimona in March of 2020. I remember it because 5 days later, they said, we're going to go home for 2 weeks and we'll come back and we'll get back to it. Cut to 10 months later, we're still making the movie. Everyone's home for COVID, but we rewrote the movie from page one rewrite, put it back up in reels in 10 months. We had 18 months to get the movie done and out the door. And we were feeling really good about these reels. It was finally connecting, feeling really emotional. We were going to share with the studio. I remember it was on a Thursday, and that Tuesday is when we were told Disney was shutting the doors to Blue Sky, closing a studio that had been around for 30 years, and with it, Nimona. So it was a pretty rough week. We shared with this. We got together in very much this environment right now and had a big Zoom viewing party. It was tough because we couldn't even get together in person to mourn the loss of a studio. But you could just tell that there was something special happening in those reels when everyone was watching it together. And really, it was those reels that found their way around town and eventually to Megan Ellison, who did the unusual thing of not looking at a giant animated film as a business proposition, but as more something that she felt needed to just exist, a story that she wanted to make sure got into the world somehow. And we did. We were down for about 6 months. The movie was dead, but we reached into the depths of the Disney vault and pulled it back out, and we finished getting the movie made. So at that point, we were just like, how do we just get this thing made? The goal was just getting it made. So all of this response to it has been humbling. It's been exciting, and it really has been confirming that the story and the characters and the themes we were trying to tell with it have really connected. And again, not just to the point where the movie exists, but we're now standing shoulder to shoulder at the highest level with all this incredible talent that you're seeing on screen today. It's a very gratifying, and we're very thankful.
You've been staring. Did somebody want pizza?
Can you please just be normal for a second?
Normal?
I just think it'd be easier if you were a girl.
Easier to be a girl? You're hilarious.
I mean, easier if you looked human.
Easier for who?
For you. A lot of people aren't as accepting as me.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get like this?
What, you mean awesome?
No, how do you... I'm just trying to understand what I'm working with here.
I'm Nimona.
That explains literally nothing.
No, you're right. You deserve a better explanation than that. I was just a kid. Cute, little, innocent me. I was playing in the woods, following the birds flying, the fish swimming, and the deer bounding. They all look so happy together. But I was alone. That's when I heard it. A song calling me, leading me to a wishing well.
A wishing well? Wait, how did you know it wasn't just a regular well?
Do you want to tell my story for me?
Oh, right, sorry, go on.
As I slowly approached the well, a coin appeared in the palm of my hand as if by magic, and I knew what I had to do. I summoned my courage, held the coin tight, threw it into the well, and made a wish. A wish to one day be trapped on a subway with an uptight knight asking me small-minded questions.
Do you still have that pizza?
Now arriving at Market Cool, Station. We're here. Oh, and so are your friends.
The next question, usually people always ask, what was the toughest challenge about this job, blah, blah. Let's start today by talking about what is your best memory of this whole experience when you look back at the filmmaking process. Joaquim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot, but if I had to sort of whittle it down to one thing, it was the fact that as artists, we were able to come together. Like, we made the film through COVID as well. And the fact, like Troy was just saying, art still found a way to survive through those really trying times. And I remember being disheartened that we were sort of all separated from each other. But as reels were coming in, as VizDev was still coming in, as that was still happening, those connections to me really solidified that I'm so happy that I chose this career path because art still found a way to survive through those really rough times. And similarly, I think a lot of artists, especially our younger artists on our team who might not have had family support systems, who were living in apartments and were alone, we could see at times that they were going through some tough times. And these moments here where we were connecting about the art, and then that was sort of branching off into other beautiful conversations and allowing us to open up to each other, that was really, really special.
Peter, what about you?
Yeah, like Joaquim's saying, there's so many moments in the life of a movie, and this one took so long, so that the ups and downs of it there's just a lot of undulation going on. Boy, a high point. Look, I mean, it's a movie that wasn't based on anything. It really was just, you know, a lot of these personal seeds from me and the crew that we sort of merged together. And could something come out of it? And trying to do a love story is difficult in these times. And so I remember building the reels and I got lost and I had personal loss. When my dad died, like I got lost. I didn't know where the story was, and I got a lot of help through that, as from the crew and from my executive producer. And I think one of the highlights was getting to that first audience preview when we were sort of sharing all the work that we had done for the first time. Again, I didn't know if the romance was going to work with an audience. I didn't know if the themes of these sort of cultural issues or the sort of the first generation, second generation storylines were going to connect at all. And after that first audience preview, you could feel it in the audience that, where they were emotional, the characters they were connecting to, and the themes and the storylines that they were connecting to. And I got very emotional over that. I think because it's not only the personal stuff, but just because you have no idea. And then the whole point of these things, like I've talked to most of these guys about just like this want to just connect to an audience. Like I love how Troy put it about when an audience starts to connect to the themes that you're trying to find clarity with in yourself too. It's not like these themes are fully formed and there you go. You're discovering so much of it along the way. And I remember that screening being, really, really extremely cool.
Pablo, where was the defining moment for you?
Yeah, I'm a writer director, so for me the script is the treasure map, and the treasure map in animation is the reels, is the animatic. It's difficult to choose one thing in the process, but I would say to put the reels together, like everybody else, I went through the COVID and the pandemia. We created a very small team that we all worked together with the mask. It was just the art director. It was this one storyboard artist. It was the music editor and the editor and me that for 1 year we did the storyboard. So the moment we finished the storyboard and we finished, okay, this is it. And we played the reels with the music and everything. And we saw the movie for the first time for me as a live action director to see the film before it got made. It was so strong. It got such a big impact in me and the team. And at that moment, I knew we had a fantastic film before even the production started. And another highlight, I have to say it, for a director to get into the official selection of Cannes and walk on the red carpet in Cannes and say, yes, this is the starting point of this film. And now to end with the Oscar. So that Cannes moment on the red carpet and Thierry Frémaux giving you a hug, that was a big moment. I thought about all the hard work, it was just there, in that moment,
Now, Dave, tell us about the first time you saw the movie, and then what went on in your mind when you realized, oh my God, they're not going to release any images. They're not going to promote it. What are we going to do? Tell us about that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I saw the film is, something I'll remember, for the rest of my life. It was going out to their studio in Tokyo, and at that point there was no music, there was no dialogue recorded. It was just just the cuts, just the reels, and so they just played it in their screening room for me, completely silent. I was jet lagged, and I was worried that if I was going to watch something silent and extremely tired, that maybe I would not be bringing my best self. But in fact, it ended up creating this like a very intense sort of like dreamlike relationship to it. I found myself just like bowled over emotionally just from the feeling of just like the beauty of what I was seeing, and just the emotion of sort of seeing that this master filmmaker had sort of kept his fastball and created something. And then I think I felt the immediate crushing weight of being sort of the person who would have to help make sure that like an audience actually saw the film. And so that like it's a very brief but a very intense high, followed by incredible stress, for the next year, which wasn't necessarily helped when I think they decided that they were going to not promote the film in Japan as sort of a stunt, which meant that we had to create basically the first of everything, the first trailer, the first poster, the first sort of the way that the film was sort of carried internationally. So that's that's also a tremendous honor. And so I think that for me, the second sort of time I got to see the film, after all of that, the first time with an actual audience at the Toronto Film Festival was also incredible, because just to see someone sort of outside, I guess like the inner sanctum, sort of be able to see this film and feel what I feel, and feel like that was like, not just me, not an isolated experience, was incredibly moving. And so that's I've seen the film now with audiences like 24 times, because it feels like such an emotional kind of communal experience.
And Troy.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many amazing moments in the making of these movies. Like there's the going from the script to a storyboard and going, all right, there's gonna be visuals, to getting into the camera, going, all right, there's gonna be cameras, to animators. Like every step, you just get this amazing sort of moment to sort of reconnect to your film. For us, the task just became so much about like, how do we do this? How do we get this done? It's just like we got to get this film made. Trying to figure out how to go from a studio movie to an independent film structure, and I remember and realizing that we didn't really, once we went into that zone, we didn't have a lot of studio. We didn't have a studio, so we didn't have studio executives giving notes, and Netflix and Megan Allison, they were very much just like, what do you guys need? Whatever you need, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of that and you go like, oh wait, like if this doesn't work, this is just on us. Like this is on us. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. So, like Pablo and Dave, like at TIFF and Con, for us was Annecy. It was the first time we realized you make these things and you're just so focused on trying to get them finished and done, and the challenges of all that. And all of a sudden it hit us. We were premiering this at Annecy and people are going to watch it. And you're like, oh shit, people are going to watch it. Like, that suddenly you find we'd sort of forgotten that aspect of it, and they're just trying to get it done. And it was such an amazing experience to be in the theater with, I can't remember how many hundred people filled that main theater at Annecy. It was packed to the brim, and then afterwards people just started clapping and standing up and clapping, and you start going like, oh my God, we should go. I started feeling very self-conscious, my Canadian apologetic side coming out. I was like, they're just being nice, just go. And they're like, no, they like it. And we stood there and they just kept crying. And it sort of, I think it rushed off over all of us for that first time. It's like, holy shit, they like it. Like people are responding to this. And that was so beautiful, only to be leveled up yet again when we went outside the theater and had these two young girls who came up to us afterwards and said, thank you. They had tears running down their face and they're like, thank you so much for this movie. I feel like I cannot wait to share this with my parents, because I feel like for the first time they're going to understand who I am. And that's when it struck me on a different level. We made a piece of entertainment that people were enjoying, but that there was this whole other level of connection that we've been able to enjoy as we do this circuit, where people have come up and said, this has given us a tool for communication, to find words that we didn't know how to say, or a way for people who didn't understand the journeys we're on to be able to see and understand the journeys we're on. And that has been the most special thing for all of us, is just that embracing of everything we were doing. It feels like confirmation that all the struggles and the sacrifices that people made on this movie were so worth it, because it's hit with the audience in a way that's so personal.
And the next question has to do with your experience and looking back. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from helming this movie? In your case, Dave, distributing this movie. Looking back, what was the biggest lesson you learned from this amazing experience, Joaquim?
Boy, I mean, you're asking us to single out one from a million lessons learned.
Most important one,
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones was to never settle. All the stuff that I'd worked on previous to this was TV, and like, don't get me wrong, we always shot for the stars in TV, but that faucet is turned on to some extent, and those episodes got to roll out. So there are some episodes that are sort of like nines and tens, and then there's going to be a couple like sevens, maybe a six or two that go out. And with this film, there was such a dedication from all fronts for this film to work on all its levels, and nobody was really willing to concede any ground. And that was a huge learning experience for me, because you get a lot of pressure from a lot of different avenues that say like, hey, you're over budget, you're over time, you're over all the things, this thing has to go. And we had a lot of amazing people that were just so dedicated to making sure that everything was right. We had, it's sort of gotten out there now, but we had an amazing sequence that was working decently well in the Pavitra Prabhakar Spider-Man India sequence. And we got a note really late in the game from a lot of our Indian crew, a lot of animators and production folk that said like, hey, we really do appreciate that you guys are going here and doing this, but Pob's quite frankly just not as aspirational a character he can be, and not a reflection of teenagers that we know we were, and teenagers that we now have that are growing up and sort of sort of in the modern era. And so, to everybody's credit and against the better judgment of anybody who had money on their mind, we went back in and cracked open those reels again, and all the stuff that I think, again, the sequence was sort of like structurally similarly the same as it always was, but the high points, the stuff that people really remember about Pavitra and why they really connected to him, they were found in those moments. And that was a huge learning lesson for me.
Excellent. Fantastic. Peter, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as Joaquim was talking. I mean, there's so many. I think two things. At first, I thought the idea of finding language between the crew and you was sort of an interesting game, because there was a lot of technology that we hadn't figured out yet to make fire and water characters, and so you were always, trying to connect and communicate in different ways, and trying to find that language was a lot of lessons. The second one was just objectivity is a currency, man. I had no idea how, doing a movie this long, your objectivity can wane and disappear. And when you've seen something over and over again, just hearing Dave talk about seeing Boy and the Heron 2,000 times, like I felt like I saw like so many of these different moments over and over again, and you can go numb to it, and trying to build that toolbox where you can see something fresh, see something heartful, see something like it's for the first time, became a big game in the last like couple years. And those lessons I feel like I'm going to take with me for a long time.
Excellent. Pablo.
Yes. Well, when I started in this business, I thought a director had just to give orders and know exactly what he wanted. But the more films I make, and this is my fourth film, I just realized that directing is more about listening than giving orders. It's just about getting all the juices and all the best of each of your crew members. It could be a production assistant and of course your head of the department. So I listen every time more, but of course it's the director responsibility to have the last word, and that's important. Like at the same time what Joaquim says, there's so many pressures in a film, so many pressures, but the director has to fight for the scene, and not to give up until he thinks it's right. If there's some kind of something negative about me, or maybe it's a positive as a director, it's just like I don't give up until if I don't see it. I'm not going to let but all the pressure, and that's something that you get with experience. I feel stronger as a director on my fourth film. I also work with the same producer, so they know me. Also, we have to talk about producers. A film doesn't exist without producers. So I'm lucky that I made 3 films with my producers, so I trust them when they tell me something that, Pablo, you cannot go this way. And they know me that if I'm fighting for something, for a scene, for a shot, so it's, you get over budget, you get out of schedule. This is not like something mechanical. There's no science. This is art, and there's so many variables, and something can happen. So, you have to dance. I think dancing. Maybe I learned to dance better with the crew. It's a question of dancing.
Excellent. Very good. Dave, what did this experience teach you that you're going to take with you? Don't ever release images before the movie. And you'll millions of dollars, $166 million.
That's right. That's right. No, yeah, I think like what I'll personally take away. I mean, there's lots of like little sort of things as there are for every sort of project like this, but I think in sort of the larger scale, I think really feeling better. I think about trusting the audience, which feels really cliche, I guess, but the film as I saw it when I first experienced it is really complicated. There's a lot of sort of either like there's darkness, the main character is sort of emerging from a fog of depression and sort of has to like sort of become bigger. There's like horror elements. There's a lot going on that I think would sort of fight against what I think is an incorrect but sort of mainstream assumption of sort of like what animation is and how like whatever kids and families are supposed to interact with things. And there was a lot of conversations I think early on about like, how much should sort of marketing or advertising or other kinds of things hide, these aspects and sort of make it sort of feel smoother. And I think that, and those were, pretty serious discussions. We felt like, our main job was to get an audience in to see the film and then they could take away, what they wanted to. But, early on when we had the first, audience screening and we actually got the feedback from people who were sort of appreciated, I think, and really liked the sort of more confrontational elements. I think that really had a huge impact on our thinking, and we decided that we would actually lean into that. And I think that the success that it's had theatrically, I attribute a lot to to social media and to audiences who are actually talking about something. I think that over the last couple of years, the industry has changed so much where there's just so many shows and films and things available to anyone 24/7 that in fact things that feel like they have a little bit more of a human touch, that they're able to sort of grapple with some of these deeper emotions and not sort of just be sort of created by a committee. I think people tell, and I think that they are really looking for something like that and want to talk about it. So certainly, for upcoming projects, I know that we're not going to shy away, I think, from, sort of challenging, I guess, people's conceptions about what animation can do.
Excellent. Good lesson. And Troy, what about you?
I mean, I'm just really going to pick up from where Joaquim and Pablo and Peter, we're going. The thing, I'd like to say I learned how to dance, but I got 2 left feet. But metaphor holds true. I think on this film, the thing I walked away with most is really listening feels like a very passive state, but in fact, an incredibly active thing to do, and really actively listening to our crew and the communities that we were trying to express thematically in the film. There were experiences that I didn't necessarily have personally, but it became so important to hear those voices and to then realize that as directors, our jobs are we're stewards. Like we don't control and strangle. We protect and steward these stories forward, and realizing that in the course of actively listening to what people had to say, how important it was for us then to you make 1,000 decisions a day as a director. Some of them as minor as like, what color is this character's socks to how many leaves should we have on the branch of this tree? They go from the mundane to knowing which hills are worth really, for lack of a better term, dying on. And we knew by how we listened, how important it was what we were trying to say in the movie, and how important it was to not compromise on what we were trying to say. And regardless of what that would mean, for us, we knew we had to be true to that. We had to protect that. We had to carry that forward. I mean, the studio ended up getting shut down anyways, but it didn't really matter. It was for, lessons learned, but it was important. It was important because it's what we do. It's what I think we've got a platform, not to be preachy, but we have the voice to say something. We should say something with it, and I think it's important. It's so important for people to see themselves in the media that they're consuming. It's so important to see yourself reflected back, to know that you have a place in this world, and so if you could do that while making people laugh and gasp and have these incredible action sequences, I think that's something. We're entertainers first and foremost, but we should have something to say. And the only way you can have something to say is if you're listening very intently to the people around you when they're telling you, great job, we appreciate the effort, but you're not quite getting it right. Then you say, okay, let's have a conversation about that. What do we have to do to get this right? So for me, that was it. It's just really actively listening and opening myself up to that.
When you look at the movies that were released this year and the movies that are nominated now, it's more evidence that, the old formulas, the old models kind of don't work anymore. And the things that kind of come to the surface and people appreciate are things that really take a chance and look different, or say something, tell a story that hasn't been said before and really touch people. What is your take on the whole environment? On one hand, we have that, and on the other hand, we have a news today that they can see that in a couple of years, AI can just completely produce a whole TV show and put it out there. What is your take on these two directions that it seems that we're being pulled at? Joaquim, you're first.
Boy, oh man, you're asking some heavy questions. Look, I will always take the hand of the artist, whether it's the written word or the drawn line or perspective for me is everything, and a unique perspective. It doesn't have to be the cleanest thing. It can be messy, but that is always the most interesting path to me. So that will be my first choice always. That being said, look, I can remember the days when I first got into the industry, we only drew on paper and I used a lot of Post-its, and then there was a transition on to everybody using, computers and drawing digitally and creating things digitally. And I remember artists of the generation just before me losing their minds and thinking that was the end of the industry. So to me, with regards to AI specifically, it's about ethics, but it's about us funneling our perspectives through whatever tool we use to tell our stories. It's about the human perspective. As far as the industry goes and the types of films that we see here that are up for nomination and are being recognized, I've been waiting my entire life for this day. I've been moved by every form of animation and filmmaking, and look, I was part of the thing that made the formula films very popular as well. So I love it all. I think it's all available. It's just perspective. It's just, I'm excited to hear people's stories. I'm excited to see people's takes on art. That's what moves me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Peter, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrified of misinformation. I'm really scared of what is going to be real or unreal in our near future. And currently, so much of the game that I feel like in all of the movies that are up here, so much of it is just trying to find truth in our experiences and trying to allow audiences to connect to those truths. But that hunt for the truth, can AI do that? It's so much. There's a faith I have in the truth that leads me through all of this, or a faith in the idea of hunting for the truth. And hearing Troy talk about the Nimona, the Blue Sky shut down. My dad's shop was right near Blue Sky, and there were a lot of people friends that I had that were affected, but that film still found a way because of its truths, because of what it holds. And I felt something similar. Elemental came out and didn't connect right away. It underperformed its first couple weekends, and then it grew, and an audience discovered it And I can only assume that it was people connecting to the different truths that we were discovering in it. And so I don't know if AI can, really discover it. I'm sure it can help us find truths to the experiences that we're trying to showcase. So in that view, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to hopefully it's a tool that'll allow more diverse stories, more layers to the onion skins of who we are, and also push the fun of what animation can be. And so, but all the films that are nominated all have this in common for me, is that they all are digging into something that we can all connect to. And the idea of being nominated is sort of that recognition in my mind, and that I think that's what's cool. And I hope that that kind of tech keeps that going ahead versus some bullshit regurgitation of others past stuff.
Nice. Pablo, what do you think about all this?
Well, I think technology shouldn't be a threat. It's how you use it. I think it's a whole evolution of cinema, like Joaquim says. So, my film is hand-drawn, so the artist had to draw. And of course, they didn't draw on paper. And I think there's always going to be something that is going to be able to make our film better. I think I couldn't have done Robot Dreams with the budget and the time, although it was a long process, with so much care and detail for the acting. If I had done it on paper, I would have needed a Disney studio to make the film. Yeah. Honestly, the complexity of Robot Dreams, if it had been made in the 40s, I couldn't have done it. But thank God to technology, I was able to make a very complex hand-drawn 2D film. Honestly, it was. But so I think it's how we use the tools, how we regulate it. I think there's a lot of big headlines and big news about AI. I think at the end, AI, it's just like a child. You just, I have a 20-year-old daughter. It's a question of how you educate it, and how we use it. So I think it's just too many headlines. And it's funny because Robot Dream, one of the protagonists is a robot. So one of the questions that I get the most, and I was not expecting, is to talk about AI in my interviews when I do junkets. And I always have to say, it's just the robot in Robot Dreams is made of little pieces like a Meccano. There's no chips, there's no software, there's no AI. It's just a metaphor. And about what is a best generous friend. And I will just connect with what Peter said. The 5 films that we are nominated this year, the reason I want to think, the main reason is there is a story, and there's a story that connects. For me, Robot Dreams is very personal to me. I'm Dog, and I lived 10 years in New York. Peter has the reason why he makes his film, Joaquim and Troy. So I think there's and of course, the great master Miyazaki. Yeah. When you see the name, you have to take off your hat. But it's the story, and I think that's what makes our films unique in themselves.
Yeah. Dave, what is your take on the universal appeal of Miyazaki, and how with movie after movie, he's able to push the envelope and creatively and move audiences all around the world? What is it that stands out for you?
Man, I think I think in part it's that he puts so much of himself, into the films, and that I think that he is so clearly working through different aspects of his own thoughts and life. I mean, it was interesting, when the AI stuff really started to take off. One of the clips that went around social a lot is there's a documentary where these people show him this AI tool that they're building, and he has an extremely negative reaction. It's this is an insult to life. This is this is
saw that was crazy.
You're basically you're taking the role of God or something, and it's disgusting. And I think that the sort of uncompromising feeling of just through his age, through his stature, or whatever, just being able to sort of be able to say what he wants, I think is really relevant. And on the AI side, I think like I do think I agree with what everyone has said, so far. I think that it is, I think, a tool that can be used, in the future. If we take like a step back and sort of in moderation, I think that there's ways that talented people can always, take advantage of new technology, and the industry will adapt. I think it's particularly, but I think we have to stay vigilant, and I think it's suffering right now also from having some of the nastiest ambassadors, I think, pushing it. I think that like when you see people talking about it, then you sort of talk about the democratization of art. It's really quickly sort of the mask is revealed that there's like almost a glee about being able to like take it away from artists, even though these models are trained on thousands, if not millions, of pieces of artist labor. And so I think that's I think that's kind of what gets people also really riled up about it, is that I think there's a respect in terms of just how the tools are used and sort of what's coming out of it, and sort of looking at this stuff and being like, oh, this thing with like 6 fingers and it looks like it's all like mistrained. I'm never gonna watch anything that's created by like a real human again or something. It's just, you're fooling yourself. So obviously they'll get better, and I think that animation has some specific ways to use it, but like, yeah, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not super concerned just yet.
Excellent. Very good. Troy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just going to +1 to a lot of these things. I think time marches on. We used to tell stories of cave paintings. I don't know how many people are going to go buy a ticket to a cave painting right now, right? Like you find the new tool, the new technology. Pablo said, like there's things. I mean, I remember the films I would try and make in animation school. I mean, it would take me 4 days to shoot it on film and have the film develop and turn around to come back, only for me to realize I forgot to open the fucking shutter halfway through and to do it all over again. Right now, I mean, and then we were all like, thank goodness, digital pencil. Like every step is a tool that allows for. And now here's an animation studio in our pocket, a film studio right there. Right, this is amazing. I think AI is terrifying because of how it's put forward. I mean, if we think of it as a tool, we think of it as a possible way to be creative and smart, but like following right in the heels with that comes very big, bold, scary statements from people like Jeffrey Katzenberg saying 90% of an animation studio will be gone, because it's like, that's the problem. I think the problem is the statement of like, here's what we can do, a new technology to replace and cut corners and not be utilized as a tool to create and to push forward a medium, but the instant approach of like, how can I now just maximize profit, undercut creativity? So I think those statements are what create a lot of fear. I think if we're smart about it, if we, are caring about it, hopefully we're not training our future robot overlords, and we can actually find a way to create some incredible things with it. It's not going to go away. So I think we just have to be vigilant about that. I think as far as like we're talking about, it is an amazing year for animation. Like amongst the nominees sitting here today, the films are so diverse and interesting. They look great. The audiences have become so much more savvy, and even beyond the films that are here. I mean, I look. There could be another 4 or 5 films that could be sitting here alongside of us.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a year, which is so exciting and so encouraging. But I think also we need to be so vigilant, because the conversation is also, but we should go back to, what was done before, because people will, like, there's always that conversation. I think we need to keep pushing the stories we're telling. We just need to be, aware of, how we want to push the art form, how we want to push the level of inclusivity and diversity, the different voices and the creativity. I think that is still a very active thing that we can't sort of say, oh, we're here, we made it, look how great this year is, and it's going to be like this. It's not. It's not if we don't keep embracing it. I also think that falls on the case of the audience. The audience has to embrace it, to accept it, to want to see it, because it's a commercial art, man. I mean, these things, we don't make them for free, right? So when you use money, let's just be honest, money has to come back in, and that's the audience. The audience can control so much of what we want to do. the studios will make decisions based on what people want to see. So if we can present really engaging stories, really exciting new looks, and the audience shows up and says, yes, more of this, please, more of this will continue. That freedom, that ability will keep expanding. So I think we just have to keep pushing for that and keep fighting for it, and elbows up and fighting our way through. Like I remember the first Spider-Verse coming out, Into the Spider-Verse came out, and I remember, like, listen, we're all going, oh, Spider-Verse is amazing. And it's this foregone conclusion. I mean, the first one came out, and I'm sure, Joaquim, you remember, people were like, this is really cool. I can't wait to see when it's finished.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And you're like, now you try and think back to comments like that. You're like, that's crazy. But that, I remember specifically, like, you're not doing depth of field. What's offset? Like all these choices that were creative that now the audience has got a language for and a hunger for. And I think you got to keep fighting for that. You got to keep pushing the boundaries, and people will pick it up. They'll find it. And they'll fall in love with it. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited about the possibilities. We have to keep pushing those boundaries, though. We can't just assume they're going to keep expanding.
We're getting a lot of questions. People want to know, what was the animated or live action movie that when you first saw it as a kid, maybe, or later, really inspired you to get into animation or get into filmmaking, get into this business? Name one that really made a big impact on you and why. Joaquim, you can go.
My gosh, man. I've said this a few times. It wasn't, so I was like a Saturday morning TV cartoon kid. I was of that generation. It was like a bowl of cereal, 6 a.m. I was in front of the TV. There was a show amongst the like 80s perennial shows that were, you had like your G.I. Joes and your Thundercats and your things and your things and your things. But there was a show called Robotech that I absolutely fell in love with when I was a kid. It was a serialized show. It didn't talk down to kids. It was a big space opera, but people fell in love. People fell out of love. People died. People dealt with the trauma of that death. And there was an ambiguity to what constitutes a good guy, what constitutes a bad guy. Some of the aliens that were like bad guys in the beginning, they sort of get intermingled with our lead characters. And then they start asking all these like existential questions about, what are we doing here and why are we fighting? And that had a huge impact on me when I was a kid.
Nice. Peter.
I mean, I'm with Joaquim. There's so many movies. I mean, that's such a tough question. That I remember my grandmother yelling at me for watching Akira because she grew up in a time where Japanese-Korean relationships weren't that great. And so like I loved watching. I would borrow Akira all the time from Blockbuster Video. That's how old I am. And it created such a crazy response for me, my brother, and my family, this movie. And that opening moments when Kaneda and Tetsuo are riding through the city, still to this day, there was like the soundtrack, the moving multiplane cameras of cities, weird laughing holographic Buddhas. It was amazing. It was that like that soundtrack to it. Like there was so many different layers of just, you could tell, oh, these are choices someone was making. Like it was so stylistic, it like pulled me out of just like, oh, a narrative. This was like filmmaking cinematic choices that were being done, as the trail lights of motorcycles going by that are hyper realistic. That movie was just still to this day just seminal in like, wow, these choices that were being made. And Miyazaki, that world of seeing an animator's or director's choices in animation was being realized because the styles were so different, between Castle of Cagliostro and Akira and Robotech. All of that was just kept fueling the different types of choices people were making.
Excellent. Pablo.
Hi. As I'm new in this, so first I wanted just to be a live action director. So the first film that it really opened my mind, where I thought there was a director behind, is when I saw it in a gigantic cinema in Bilbao, Jaws. I was gone. I was thrilled. I was there. I was going for the white shark. I scream, I laugh. And it made me so many films, so many feels, so many things with the changes of shot, the point of view, the camera moving. I don't know. I was like ecstasy, cinematographic ecstasy. So that was the film. For me, I said, directed Steven Spielberg. So that's the first time I thought about being a director. And I have to tell a quick anecdote. At the luncheon nominees, can you believe that I'm on the photo call alone? And suddenly behind me, it was just Steven Spielberg. So I almost faint. My heart started beating so fast. And I had to have my moment. I had to express my admiration to the master. So I just shake hands to him, told him the same story that I just told right now. And I was just like, in tears. But I had to say at the end, have you seen Robot Dreams? I had to push. No. So if Steven Spielberg is watching in the screening room,
He is.
And tell me something, I saw it. I think in the gala, just that it doesn't matter what happens. It will make my day if Steven Spielberg Robot Dreams. So that's the film. But now I'm an animation director. So I have to say my animation moment. When I discovered in the 90s, the first Miyazaki film that I saw was Porco Rosso. And then I had to discover everything. I don't know. The moment I discovered Miyazaki, I said, who is this director? And I was just a live action director. And I saw everything. Cagliostro, Kiki, Totoro. And then after that, I saw everything. It's just, he's a master in cinema. And I think that's very important that it's clear. Miyazaki is one of the great directors of all time. It doesn't matter animation of live action, he's amazing. He's really like something. We hope he makes one more film. Please, Dave, push.
Yeah, whatever you can do, buddy.
Yeah, Dave, it's all on you now.
We want one more. At
Yeah,
least
Dave.
one more.
I feel like we're all suddenly ganging up on Dave. We're going to take him out, after lunch.
That's right, Dave.
That's right.
Come
That's
on,
right.
man.
That's right.
We're all counting on you now. What about the movie that really inspired you?
I think that Princess Mononoke, I think, was really, I grew up in a smaller town in the Midwest. We didn't really get much in the way of like what I would call like art house or independent cinemas. It was really just kind of like the biggest releases. And so I had, a great time watching all kinds of, studio films that blew my mind and didn't make a lasting impression. But that was the first time I remember sitting in a theater and just being like, to see something of this scale, in an actual theatrical setting, really changed my life. I think that was really the level of the themes he was working with, the violence, the kind of the emotion, the sort of no bad, no good, just kind of gray area stuff. I think was really impressive to me. As sort of an early lesson in storytelling and how that can work. And then I think the other follow up, not a film but a series. Sort of similarly, Neon Genesis Evangelion was like the first thing that I watched that I think like I would get in like forum fights over. And I remember spending countless hours, in like early iterations of the internet, like on like Usenet, whatever, just like arguing over like the stupidest minor details or something. And so to care that passionately about animation, that's when I was like, all right, this is like probably where I should go. So those
Very
are the
nice.
two.
Glad you did. All right, Troy.
Well, I'm going to class this up a bit. I remember watching Citizen Kane for the first time. Listen, if I'm going to be honest and answer this, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know, listen, it feels a bit of a tropey answer, but I remember watching that movie and going, what is this? It was big popcorn, just fun fare, but again, in the hands of Spielberg, who just takes that to a level, that where it's entertaining, and yet I was so drawn in the big score, the action pieces. But what really locked in for me was the characters. Like, here's this hero, this Indiana Jones, this giant, larger than life, iconic, and it's like, he's our hero, we're cheering for him, but he's also doing some really questionable things. And did he just like, he shot the guy with a sword? That's not fair. It was this thing where I found myself very, excited and in it, but conflicted with, and I thought, this is such a fun, complex, before I could figure out what those words were, what I was, these are all the realizations I came to after watching it, 200 times at Blockbuster, Peter, I'm with you. I'm going to admit that too. Yeah, I started going like, oh, this is, I think, what it was, the way that character was coming. It was something that was unique. It was different. I mean, you're used to the hero being Superman, and he's gonna do everything right. And then you watch that shot where, there's the giant Nazi in the airplane, and he just gives India a shot in the head, and his knees go weak, and he goes down. It's like, that's not what's supposed to happen to the hero.
Right.
It was really exciting. And for me, in flips on animation, it was Jungle Book. I mean, not that there's a huge connected integral storyline there, but it was just this wonderful character exploration of this simple journey for this child to sort of get back to safety, and all the interesting characters that he encountered. And I mean, just the artistry of it for me, I can nail it down to Shere Khan. That was, as someone trying to draw, I'm like, how is this happening? Like, all those lines, like I started to realize how crazy that was. But what really struck me was I was terrified of Shere Khan. He never raises his voice. He's very sophisticated. And there was this cool threat that was always there in this character who's like, knows that he's more badass than anybody else around. And he doesn't have to shout. He doesn't have to be big. He doesn't have to be loud to be dangerous. And I was like, that was cool. That was cool when looking back in those those two, how a hero and a villain can be handled in such opposite ways, and maybe you expect those characters to operate, and yet you can find ways to connect with an audience on those levels. And to this day, I still think those are just wildly influential.
I have one more question that someone said that is very simple, but it's very sweet. They said, what would you like people to remember about your movie that you made? That's your movie. Joaquim?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think for as big as that film gets, and for as many things as we throw at the screen, it's actually a really small film about family and about forging your own path. So, we could have set that story in rural America. We could have set that story anywhere we wanted in the world. We chose to set it across multiple universes with spider people swinging all over the place and T-Rexes and whatnot. But that story is actually a really small story that I hope people have really connected to and found relatability in.
Nice, beautiful. Peter?
Yeah, Elemental's been so much about vulnerability and empathy. And so, trying to either be that safe place for someone to be vulnerable, or allowing yourself to share in that empathy to connect to someone would be great, and I'd be grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you. Pablo?
I would like that they will remember Robot Dreams like as an emotional ride. If while they were watching the film, they remember people that they love or they lost. They don't have to think about dog and robot. They have to think about people from their own lives. So I made this film as a memory for people that I love and they're not with me anymore. So I would love that it would happen also to the audience, the same feeling.
Beautiful. Dave, what do you hope people will remember from the Miyazaki movie?
I hope that they take away sort of the underlying message, which is that you can get through anything. Is really a big piece of it. I think that's sort of the sort of emotional truth at the center of it. And then I guess from the industry perspective, I hope that it provides further proof that there's both artistic and financial viability in 2D. Even as I think there's incredible things being done in multiple different formats, but obviously it's a business, and so I think studios always look at sort of what's working, and there is a path, I think, for 2D to still be able to reach people emotionally, even if it feels maybe a little old-fashioned.
Excellent, very nice. Troy, you're the final answer here.
Oh, the pressure. I thought this is the reverse of poor Joaquim through this whole thing. I was like, thank God I'm going first. I gotta sweep up. Listen, I hope people can watch Nimona and have a great time. I hope they can laugh. I hope they can have just fun. I hope they can say that was a really enjoyable ride, and be happy with that. But then I also hope beyond that, that they can recognize how we need to step back sometimes and just see people for who they are, not judge, not assume, but give them a chance to just be seen for the person they are, and how simple acts, very simple acts, one person can make a difference in another person's life. Sometimes very much a life-saving difference. I mean, we're in a moment right now where it's crazy to say we're banning books, we're revoking people's human right to say who they love, to say who they want to be. We're attacking some of the most vulnerable people in our society who need our support, not our ire. And I wish in all my heart, Nimona wasn't as relevant in this moment as I think it actually is, because I think that would mean we're in a much better place in how we treat each other. But I hope that in some small way, after they're done laughing and crying and having a good time, they can find a way to just be kind to one person. Yeah. So
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. You're all our heroes. Thank you for putting such amazing, moving, fantastic art out into the world in this, as Troy said, in this very difficult world, and making it so much better. And you're all winners in our book. And whatever happens in March, we love you all and love your art. Thank you, Maria Elena, for putting this together. The View Conference, October 14th through 19th in beautiful Torino, Italy. I wish I could go. I wish to see you all. And thank you again. Thank you for joining us.